The Pacific Northwest, a terrible mistake was made. And because of it, this woman shed a startling light on the child's brain. To protect her privacy, we'll call her Chelsea. When Chelsea was born, she could not hear. Yet doctor after doctor mistakenly diagnosed her as retarded. As she grew, local schools rejected her, deepening her isolation, as Chelsea's mother remembers.
It was very sad when the other children would go out the door. She had to stay behind. And that was a thing all through her life. She wanted to go to school. She wanted to learn.
It wasn't until Chelsea was 31 years old that Dr. Peter Glusker, a neurologist, saw her and immediately sensed the truth.
She wouldn't look at me. She sat in a corner. She looked very frightened, but was extremely observant of everything that was going on around her. It was quite a memorable day.
Dr. Glusker fitted her with hearing aids. For the first time, Chelsea could hear almost normally. To ease her into the world and to make up for lost time, a team of experts started teaching her words and how to use them. And today, after 13 years of work, Chelsea is an engaged, interested part of the community. She holds a job at a veterinary clinic. There's just one problem. She wants to tell you that the cat scratched her.
Baby cat look scratch. He got cat boy. He's washing the bath, the fish.
Chelsea became a living lesson that the physical connections in the brain which produce coherent sentences will in effect fade away if they're not used early in life. And Chelsea is not the only warning about the brain and the opportunities that can be lost. Did you know if newborn babies are deprived of sight, by about 3 or 4 months, they forever lose the chance to form the wiring in the brain for normal sight? And another thing, baby monkeys deprived of a soft motherly touch right after birth never recover emotionally. They're impassive, withdrawn. In other words, is it possible that if you would deprive normal kids like these, emotionally or intellectually, they could pay a permanent price in the wiring of the brain?
And their internal structures that are beginning to become active.
Dr. Michael Phelps of UCLA thinks so. He co-invented the brain imaging technique called a PET scan. But let me see if I understand what you're saying. You're saying that these developmental years are not just a chance to educate, but they're actually your obligation to form a brain, and if you miss the opportunities, you have missed them.
Forever.
Dr. Harry Chugani of Children's Hospital of Michigan thinks so, too. He told us that every newborn brain is a profusion of brain cells waiting to form connections. But he worries that some children are not getting the kind of attention and care, whether at home or in daycare, they need to stimulate proper brain development. For example,
if the child is left alone with a bottle in a crib with very little interaction for most of the day, these kinds of biological processes will not follow a normal course.
To show you just what these scientists mean, let's start at the beginning of human life.
Hi, Mommy. Hi, Mommy. Hi, Dad.
We were there at Boston's Brigham and Women's Hospital when Mary and Marvin Gans welcomed little Perry Catherine. Scientists now know that Perry Catherine is not only this, she's also this. The red dots signal intense activity. In a newborn, you'll only see red in the areas governing simple motor activity, those wiggly arms and legs. And welcome to the world, Perry.
Yes, beautiful.
Yet even a few hours after birth, as Dr. Edward Tronick of Boston Children's Hospital's Child Development Center showed us, Perry's eyes can track a ball. But the surprise is, as she starts tracking the objects of the world, this in turn causes her to sprout the connections in her brain which actually produce sight. These astounding photographs are from Stanford University. They are just such connections being formed in an animal brain.
You call her and I'll call her too.
Perry. Perry.
Come to this side. Come over here.
And even in the womb, Perry was, in effect, already getting wired up to recognize her mother's voice.
Oh, Perry. Perry.
Babies are born most sensitive to the frequencies in the human voice.
Harry, honey, you know you know.
For the first 6 to 12 months of life, Perry's brain has so much language potential she can respond to the sounds of Greek or Chinese as well as English. But the language she hears repeatedly will strengthen particular connections, while over time, the others she doesn't hear will fall away. Renowned child development expert Penelope Leach says it's all scientific reinforcement of parental intuition.
It isn't really that babies say mama and papa as their first words. It is that we're so pleased when we hear those sounds that the baby gets a real big reaction. Oh, he says, mama, did you hear mama? Mama.
He is the papa of all papas. He is the papa.
And look how she looks at you.
He is papa.
The baby has said 47 other sounds this morning, and nobody's clapped.
And so a connection is formed in the brain.
Certainly.
So what is the lesson of all this? Leach says, talk to your baby. Engage. Be descriptive.
Yeah, what's in there?
Caca.
There's a baby. A picture of a baby.
Seek attentive childcare. And you'll help sprout a rich growth of connections in the brain that dance with the environment, that gives wing to human potential. Nobody knows all the effects different environments, even outside the home, have on a child's brain, but scientists are trying to find out. And think what Chelsea could say if, as a child, she'd only heard the sounds of life.
Good girl.
And what about these babies who have to begin life in isolation? They are premature babies, and did you know that children who are premature have a higher incidence of attention deficit disorder and learning problems?
The whole family.
Dr. Heidi Alls of Harvard.
They have much more difficulty doing things collaboratively with both hands.
Alls is convinced that this is because brain development is altered by the way a lot of hospitals care for preemies. And instead of the serene sea of the womb, they're bombarded by sights and sounds, which confuses the wiring in a brain not yet ready.
Thank you for letting us be here.
Since it's proven gentle caressing changes the chemistry in the brain, here at Brigham's, fathers and mothers like Denise Marion come in daily to touch and warm their babies next to their skin.
Oh, look, integrate. Look, his hand is over on Chandra's shoulder.
The results are wonderful. Premature babies treated this way gain weight more quickly, suffer less lung disease, and less bleeding in the brain. Their motor coordination is more organized, and they're more responsive when spoken to.
My baby.
So the newborn brain is an opportunity not to be missed, but it's not the only one. What is the new science teaching about windows of opportunity for toddlers and young children? Well, for one thing, music. Singing, listening, playing changes the brain. Studies have shown that Mozart actually strengthens the pathways in the young brain used for math and reasoning. And a new study shows that learning melodies also helps the pathways for learning to read. And what about language? These are kindergartners at PS 98 in New York singing a 200-year-old song in German. Brain research shows that grade school, not high school, is the time to teach a second language. By the age of 12 or 13, the connections for reproducing foreign speech and sounds without any accent are already beginning to fade. And what about memory? Can you memorize this list in a few seconds? Well, Dr. Marcus Rakel of the world-renowned Brain Research Center in St. Louis found that people who naturally memorize visually using that red area in the back of the brain don't do as well as those who remember here, in the part of the brain that remembers by repetition and rehearsal.
And that was really kind of a surprise.
If you remembered the list easily, you probably used the strategy of repeating the words to yourself. So training through repetition.
1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
Could strengthen the memory like exercise strengthens a muscle.
We know that repetition is something very small children love. And they're right. Many 18-month to 3-year-olds don't want a different bedtime story every night.
You like your book, right?
We shouldn't impose our sort of adult feeling that this must be boring. I can't read The Three Bears. Again, I know it by heart. Yes, you do know it by heart, and so does your child, and that's the point. Repeat and repeat and repeat.
But perhaps the most important news of all about the child's brain has to do with loving interaction, that dance between parent and child.
All of this interaction is changing the brain's chemistry so that it gets ready to learn.
Studies have shown that a little bit of excitement in the receptors for learning in the brain can open, but too much trauma, stress, or fear, and the receptors for learning can actually close. Take a look at this. We visited with experts at the Boston Children's Hospital's Child Development Center, where a group of mothers volunteered for a study to show how even a few minutes of simple unresponsiveness have an impact on a child. First, the mothers were instructed to play. Then they were told to ignore their child. Dr. Catherine Weinberg explains.
As you can see, she's not smiling anymore. She's starting to get a much more concerned look on her face. She's also changing color a little bit. You can see that she's becoming a little bit more red.
She's still too young for words, but not too young to communicate. The boys are even more distressed than the girls when their mothers ignore them. By the way, these babies were not hurt. This was just a brief test. But studies have shown that long-term exposure to stress hormones can have a direct impact on the brain. So what does it mean to live in a land of equal opportunity when some children's brains are wired by this, while others by security, stimulation, joy? Virtually every scientist we spoke with said the new research is a clarion call, that if the country really cares about the nation's children, instead of getting rid of programs like Head Start, they'll strengthen them and start them earlier, at a time they can make a profound difference in a child's brain. Dr. Craig Ramey of the University of Alabama visited with us at the type of center he'd like to see for all children. For the past 15 years, he has taken children as young as 1 year and provided parental training, health care, and a stimulating daycare environment. And he says measured dramatic, lasting improvements for the children. What kinds of things? IQ?
Certainly IQ.
Ramey emphasizes the key is starting young.
If we want to be about the business of prevention, we need to be there by at least 12, 13, 14 months of age.
So this is a desperate wake-up call.
Well, it depends on how serious our country is about its children and its overall future.
The nation's children are everybody's future, and what happens in those first 3 years before school really, really matters to that future. And we leave you with a final image about children and what they need from the adults in their lives. At Rockefeller University, there is a bird cage which is quiet. The scientists there tell us they've learned that if baby songbirds like these don't hear a parent singing, when they grow up, they'll never learn to sing. Penelope Leach says that the lesson of all this is not to start babbling incessantly to your baby. Babies also need quiet time. And scientists say that passive activity like watching television may, in the end, wire the brain differently than reading or human interaction. And we thought you might want to know how some of the little ones we featured in our story are growing, so we checked up on them just yesterday. Perry Catherine Gans is 8.5 months old now, a happy, healthy little girl who still delights in hearing her parents' voices. And Gary and Chandra Marion, the premature twins, are 9 months old now and keeping very busy, bouncing around, exploring the world.